Okay, so I know this isn't the usual kind of content I make, but it's a project for school, so chill. Okay, so I'm not very experienced with this alternate history stuff, so take it easy with me. I mean, it's easy to take out a single person, or maybe even an insignificant battle, but a whole movement? That's difficult. So, as you could probably figure out from the title of this video, I'm going to be exploring what American life would be like if for some reason Manifest Destiny just didn't exist. What if, for some reason or another, nobody decides to go west? What if America just stayed as its original few colonies? Now, I'm not a historian, so I might be completely against what you would think would happen here. To start, I'll be ignoring the fact that one of the driving forces for the American Revolution was that Britain was limiting America's spread. I'll just assume that without the want to expand, the revolutionaries still fight hard enough to win and do as such. I'll start a little before our split to get you caught up. It's 1777, the US is just split off of Britain, and we've got our Articles of Confederation to keep us in line. But that won't last. Now it's 1787, and the government's rolling out a new constitution, and it's giving us all the land east of the Mississippi River. Now here's where our timeline will split. This is all of the land America will ever claim. Perhaps they don't seek out any more land for fear of becoming more like the empire that spawned the country, Britain. Also, I'm going to assume that over time, all of the land on the American continent gets expanded to by the closest colonies and their respective parties. I will assume that America does take Florida, since that's south and not west. With no Manifest Destiny, there won't be any Louisiana Purchase. Perhaps there would still be movement into these areas, just not as large and probably not officially acknowledged. I think that, without America gaining the land in Louisiana Purchase, the land would probably stay with Spain or be sold to Britain. But Britain probably wouldn't buy the land, since they would still be fearing that a rebellion could erupt from another colony, and starting another one might not be the best idea in that position. Moving on, in 1811 the Battle of Tippecanoe happens solely as a defense of America's territory, not to gain territory. This is because America's got no will to gain any more territory. Now, getting to one of my main points in this video, there would be no War of 1812. Without the Louisiana Purchase or a will to expand, America won't attack Canada, or at least in large enough numbers to start a full-blown war. Although the masses would obviously react angrily to the government just idly sitting by and taking the hit to the country's pride, in effect it would just be more of the same for the citizens, as during 1811 that's what was already happening. Perhaps the people would then start another revolution or march on the capital to force the government into acting on the British's impressment and sanctions. This could go one of two ways. As I see it, if the colonists choose to start a revolution, then the government would use the funds that would have in our timeline gone to the War of 1812 to suppress the rebellion, and then they wouldn't have any funds to battle Britain if they did decide to do anything. And if for some reason they still decided to go to war, they would lose everything. On the other hand, should the colonists choose to peacefully protest, then all is probably dandy in the government. For them, this would be the War of 1812. This would obviously result in a tie, just as it did during our timeline, with Britain stopping the impressment of American sailors and lifting the trade sanctions that they had. To move on, I suppose that the acquisition of Florida would still happen, as that's expanding southward, but in the case that America doesn't annex Florida, it's likely that our economy would flounder, given that if we did claim Florida, then we would gain a bunch of port towns and through them trade, which would keep our economy alive. To continue, the Indian Removal Act probably couldn't happen, as the U.S. wouldn't have any land to move the Indians into. If they had acquired Florida, they could possibly move them there, although I doubt there would be enough space, as even in our timeline there was not enough space. The government could always just deport the natives, but they probably wouldn't agree to those conditions, aka being deported in exchange for their land. Now, Texas's independence. I assume that Texas will still continue on with its revolution. Although once they become independent, they will still have to just manage themselves, as joining the U.S. would be a bad idea for them, because there wouldn't be any quick and fast way for the state to communicate, as they would have to either go through the ocean or Spain's territory. So Texas, having to handle themselves, will probably turn out just fine, I'm sure. The Oregon Trail. It will probably still stay existent, but it probably won't become as popular and would definitely be longer, as it wouldn't have one of its ends on Missouri. I think that it would probably start in either Boston or Baltimore. Of course, this wouldn't fare too well on the economy, since while still faster than making a new route, the route would still take forever to travel on. The election of 1844 was between Henry Clay and James K. Polk in our timeline. The result would be the same, but not for the same reasons. In our world, Polk won because he was pro-manifest destiny, something we don't have here. In this timeline, James K. Polk will win because he's not twice the average age expectancy. During 1844, Henry Clay was 67 years old, and the age expectancy was 41 years from birth, or 9.5 years from his age. James K. Polk, meanwhile, was 49 years old, just a bit past what they would think of average. Instead of annexation, Texas would probably just experience a large amount of trade with the U.S. Oregon, however, probably wouldn't get as much, given that they would be much farther away than Texas from the U.S. That, or Texas and Oregon managed themselves to close self-sufficiency. Now, a hot take. The War of 1812 wouldn't happen. In our timeline, one of the main reasons for the War of 1812 was that America had kind of expanded into Texas, but in this timeline, that won't happen. As such, neither will the War of 1812. Well, I mean, the war would probably still happen, just only between Texas and Spain. With this, obviously Spain would win and retake Texas. Obviously, the Gadsden Purchase wouldn't happen because the U.S. wouldn't have any adjacent territory, so trying to move armies into the territory would be a declaration of war on whatever country they would move through. Also, the Mormon migration would probably not happen unless there was a trade route between the East and West Coast like our Oregon Trail. The Mormons would probably settle somewhere like Missouri if they didn't settle in Illinois. Now, the California Gold Rush. If gold was discovered in our Spanish California, then the news of it would probably spread across the continent, just as it had in our timeline. I'm imagining that this would probably be the only instance of a lot of people moving west. I think that perhaps they would somehow build a railroad from the U.S.'s east coast to the west. I think they would do this because money motivates even lazy people like me to do hard things, such as making this video. They would probably either build the railroad through international public works like highways in Europe today, or have America buy all the land along the rails. Well, that wraps up all the topics I had chosen for this video. Hopefully, seeing a world without manifest destiny has awakened you to why it's so important to America's evolution. I'm probably wrong though, since this is my first time. Probably like really early on. Maybe without manifest destiny, the US never becomes independent. Well, I'll see you losers next time. Bye.